Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have an amazing show today. You know, if you want to talk about growth and you want to talk about scaling your company, I brought Dr. Chris Daigle on the show. He's known as Dr. Daigle, and it's easy to remember the D and the D, Dr. Daigle. He's a very innovative investor and advisor, and he's the owner of Daigle Strategic. He is really a strategic growth expert. And so many people have said, Jake, please bring a strategic growth expert on the show. Let's talk about scaling a company. So, of course, I reached out to the world preeminent expert, Dr. Daigle, to come on the show today. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Hey, thanks so much for the opportunity to be on. This is awesome.
Thank you, Chris. So as we always do, and what's legendary is we pull the lens back to 30,000 feet and tell us all about Daigle Strategic.
That is one of the companies in my portfolio. It's my, I guess, the tip of the spear if you want to work with me. It is a advisory consultancy primarily focused on scaling your company like mad, making the growth easy, and keeping the owners sane in the process. So that's kind of my specialty.
I love it, Chris. It's awesome. And you have such an amazing background and experience. Really, I don't want to say how old you are, but you're like me. You have decades of experience, and you help so many companies unlock their business's truest potential. And what you really are an expert in is helping companies develop a new game plan for their business. So what type of companies reach out to you, and what type of companies are you helping with your strategic advice right now, Chris?
A variety. Most of the clients that I specialize in are leveraging the digital landscape. For instance, today I have an hour-and-a-half consult with an agency a digital marketing agency based out of St. Louis, I think, 80 employees. They want to double that without things getting too crazy internally. I also work with a company, another company I consulted with this week was a financial publisher doing 9 figures per year and providing proprietary financial analysis for self-directed investors. So as long as you're using the internet, as long as sales and marketing are a focus, if you want to, I guess, get a lot better at that within your company, and you also want to perhaps evaluate how do we grow without creating too much chaos, I'm a fit, at least for a conversation, for sure.
I love it. I love it so much. So many companies reach out to you. You're known for really helping to keep the owners and the C-suite executives sane while they're doing this massive growth through the sort of strategic plan that you help them put together. What does the first call typically sound like when a company reaches out to you, Dr. Daigle? What does that sound like?
Chris, we're in trouble. It's usually, okay. And it's ideally, I'm getting a call before there's too much pain. I prefer to work with entrepreneurs, founders, owners that understand the value of planning and executing a plan. Most entrepreneurs, I've been one for many years, and Jake, you are too. Brute force and sheer ignorance seems to be the protocol initially, but at some point, that's no longer going to provide the environment for growth that you're looking for. So that's where I step in, where we focus more on the finesse built around a multi-year strategy.
That's really interesting, Chris. You know, we talk about corporate culture so much on the show. One of the things that you're an expert in is corporate culture as well. And when you talk to companies, how often is their corporate culture sort of not in synergistic fashion with what the company's trying to accomplish with their brand?
Usually. If it's a mature company, it's a different story. If it's a company that's going that's really on the growth path, the culture that got them there, the grind that got them to where they are now, the grind only gets you so far. And that seems to be where the cultural schism is. And I have a friend who taught me this a long time ago. He does a similar thing for large enterprises, but he shared with me his belief that culture change is measured in years, which is kind of scary if your culture's bad. And that's kind of, I come in. So one of the areas that I focus on, I know entrepreneurs, especially when you're on the grind, you're kind of like, culture, we'll worry about that later. Right. However, I can tell you that, what's the quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, something along those lines. So I believe that you can have both. So
that's great. That's awesome. And of course, it always starts at the top. And I know that you work with so many high-level executives, and certainly, your reputation is out into the, internet world, and the people and the case studies that you have are incredible. So when we think about strategy and we think about companies reaching out to you and they say, hey, I'm in trouble, what is it that really is the biggest problem? Is the problem that they don't have enough customers? Is the problem they don't know how to market to get the customers? Is the problem they don't know how to sell and close the business? Is there one area where most companies sort of have the big problem, or is it the problem everywhere?
So if you're reaching out to me, you've probably been referred by another business, because I don't do a lot of advertising. And those businesses typically tend to be businesses that have already proven market viability. They're making money, but they're kind of stuck. So the number one thing that I typically discover is that when I ask them where do they want to go, the answer is some version of just more, right? And a quote that Wayne Dyer taught to me a long time ago, but it was from Lao Tzu. It's, when the cup is full, stop pouring. And if you don't know when the cup is full, you're on the paper chase. Bad game to play, right? So what I do is I work with companies initially and say, okay, how do we know that we've won? Well, I don't know. More. Well, what does more look like? I don't know. Okay, well, let's start with a number and a date, and let's work back from there. Would you be happy if your company was doing 100 million, 10 million, $1 billion? What's that number, and when is that date? And that North Star for most companies, like I was taught this concept of stable data. When there's a lot of chaos going on, you want to find that one piece that everything starts to revolve around, so the chaos starts to take form into something that's more manageable. And that North Star date and amount, I know business is made up of more than just the money side of things. However, that North Star tends to be the stable data that allows us to get everything else lined up for a company to start to get traction and move in the right direction and stop the chaos and feel excited about the future again and look forward to waking up on Mondays and not feel like I'm back on the grind kind of thing. It's pretty exciting to see happen.
Well, Chris, I love that. It makes all the sense in the world. It's very powerful. And for the entrepreneurs watching the show, rewind what Chris just said. Rewind that back, because that's really a key. I love that. And it's so simple. I've never really heard it put into such a simplistic format, where you look at the North Star, which is really a date and an amount. And we know that business is not all about the money, but certainly counting the chips is a way to determine whether you're being successful financially. And look at the date and look at the amount. And I love that so much, because even in my world, even in my businesses, now that you said that, it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, I can start with a date and an amount, and then everything works together to get there. Is that what you're saying? Because it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I can't take credit for it. It's kind of a foundational element of an operating system for your business called EOS. And if you're not familiar with that, Google the term. Great framework for managing forecast, the whole deal, running your business. I can tell you though that right there, when I'm working with an executive team or a founder or whatever, once they have that, exactly like you said, they're like, it's that easy? And it really is. I can tell you that, and I'll tell you why this is important. If you don't have that number, we're at a board meeting, and let's say, Jake, you and I are in a business together, and I think, man, I want to take this thing to 100 million. And you're thinking, wow, 20 million would be huge. If we haven't shared that disconnect before, when I'm in the shower, I'm thinking about decisions that get us to 100 million. And when you're walking the dog, you're kind of spacing out and you're thinking about, how do we get to 20 million? The questions are different, the answers are different, and the outcome, of course, will create some sort of misalignment between where the executive team is focused. So that alone gets everybody moving in the same direction, thinking the same time, how do we get to blank? And the mind will give you the answer. I mean, that you'll be paying attention to $20 million answers versus $100 million answers. And that doesn't really help me if I want to get my company to 100 and you want to go to 20.
I love it. I mean, it's incredible. You know, we talk about mini Harvard MBA events on the show, as you know, Chris. And when you go to Harvard, you've got the professor and the students, and they do case studies, and they get into groups, and they figure out answers, and they get graded on sort of the way in which the answer comes across. But those case studies are not really firmly planted on the ground. What really is planted on the ground is the real entrepreneurs with their feet on the ground that are going through the process of really running a business. And you can't take what's in the real world and really transfer it over to a Harvard classroom. So entrepreneurs get this mini Harvard MBA events all the time. And when we talk about sales organizations, Chris, and, you know, of course, you help the companies with the North Star. And now they say to themselves, well, how do we get to the North Star? How oftentimes is their sales cycle or their deal cycle too long or incorrect or not working for the company?
I'd say 99% of the time there's optimization available, right? And so my initial experience in I guess, entrepreneurship on the digital side was a direct response digital marketer. I fed my family by understanding influence and persuasion in a marketing environment using digital, and then converting the sales part of it, because marketing and sales, they're two different words, of course, but they're also two different things with two different intentions. So that's an area where I tend to focus a lot. There's maxim in business. There's nothing that more sales can't fix. Right? Like if more money comes in, the attitude, the morale rises, and then it's a lot easier to say, hey guys, operationally, let's try something different, right? If you come in and you look to focus on the operations and fix that first, for me, that's not where I like to start. I like to start on sales and marketing. Let's take a look at your market. Who are you attracting? How many are you attracting? How are you attracting? What's the messaging? Is there a good match of message to market there? And because that part of the business it's arithmetic, it's math. And somebody told me a long time ago that arithmetic is not an opinion. Okay. So 20% conversion rate or opt-in rate versus a 28% opt-in rate. Are we doing better? Yes, we're doing. It's easy to measure that way. So I like to start there. That's a great place to get trust with the clients. Because again, it's not that I'm adding value. We added $3 million last month. There's no disputing whether or not, like, I agree what that is, you agree what that is. So that's where I like to start. And then from there, it really, the morale boost that comes from doing the same thing, but making more sales, making more money it's phenomenal to see it happen.
Chris, I like it. And it just is so interesting the way you're able to take sort of complex problems and simplify them in a way that business owners understand. So when we think about sales and we think about you getting into a company and helping them scale and keeping, you know, the C-level executives' minds sort of, you know, not to get freaked out, let's just say. Yeah. When you look at the sales cycle, Dr. Daigle, you know, do you say to yourself, wow, if we can just increase the sales cycle, maybe, you know, increase the close rate, if you will, 10, 20, 30%, just, you know, in a small way, that's going to reap big rewards for the company. How do you approach that when you come into a company?
So I have about 30 levers that I look for in a marketing and sales process. So that's one of the first things that we actually do is we go into detail. Okay, well, what's the number here? What's the KPI here? We establish the benchmark, and then we look for a friend of mine named Frank Kern introduced me to this term. He calls them GOOs, G-O-O, glaringly obvious opportunities. So once we've mapped out your full marketing and sales process, what's the highest leverage lever we can pull first? Okay. And that may be more traffic. It may be better conversions on the opt-in. It may be more people taking you up on the scheduled appointment. Whatever that is, we're going to focus there because we know that if that's the big lever and we can move that everything else benefits. And then we look for GOO number 2, glaringly obvious opportunity number 2. And we just kind of work our way through your marketing and sales process. But the compounded effect of all of these things is pretty incredible. I mean, it's not uncommon. When I'm working with a company, I'm asking them, where do you want to go? And usually it's like, well, we'd like to add 20%. And one of the things that I like to do with entrepreneurs is I push them and I say, That's great. How do we 10X the business? We can't. Well, let's ask ourselves. I know we can't, but let's ask ourselves how we would. And that just gets them thinking bigger than that. It goes back to that disconnect between the exec team. If I'm shooting for 100 million, you're shooting for 20, the questions that you're asking are different. So if I can get you to think, well, shit, how do we 10X the business? Wow, that's pretty ambitious. Doesn't matter if you 10X it. Maybe you only double the business. It's still better than the 20% growth that you want to do. So that's an area that I like to focus on as we start there, and then we figure out how to do it with the sales and marketing process. And usually within a 3 to 5 year cycle, for a lot of companies, it's common for them to go, maybe we don't 10X, but we certainly 5X the business. And it's something that was way beyond what they ever thought was possible because they were asking the wrong questions.
I love it, Chris. You ask all the right questions. You know, it's unbelievable. If you have two founders and one of the founders saying, well, I want to be at 100 million in 3 years, and the other founder saying, well, I'd be happy at 20 million in 3 years, it's an entirely different mindset. And I can see how those two mindsets of, let's just say in this pretend situation of those co-founders, really work against each other. And it's up to someone like you to come in and get people on the right page. And I love this idea about the 10X because you hear it all the time. You know, you talk to a business owner or an entrepreneur and they're talking about, well, we're trying to increase our business by 20%. Well, why not try and 10X the business? And if you just fall short by 50%, you've 5X'd it, which is, 25 times more than just 20%ing the business, right? So it's really good, interesting, Chris. I love the way you do it, and I love the way you think about it. It's really refreshing, to talk to an expert that doesn't get all mucky, that doesn't get all, involved in their own intellect and in their own brain, and they keep things super simple. Where did that come from your perspective? How have you been able to sort of position yourself as the expert that's able to keep things simple for people to understand?
So, Occam's protocol, simplest solution is usually the best. For me, I got kids and I got a wife and usually like for me, that's where I learned it was just, okay, and then there's a book out there called Straight Line Leadership by a guy based out of Phoenix, Dusan Jukovic, perhaps is his last name. I think he gives the PDF away for free. But that book really opened my mind up to if we want to go from A to B, let's just go there. Let's don't hold committee meetings and blah, blah, blah. I understand that there's things that you have to do so you don't, rock the apple cart too much. But straight line leadership, Occam's protocol, between those two things, I realized that, and also, honestly, man, meditation. Just not having an attachment to the outcome makes it's very freeing because you get to say what you want, what you need, right? You don't have to worry about, and I'm not saying that when I'm like a bull in a china shop by any measure. I'm very diplomatic in my delivery of suggestions, advice, and strategy and that sort of thing. However, if I'm too concerned about, well, what are they going to think if I say this, then I'm not giving you the information that you really need. And that I believe that you really need. So I'm okay ripping Band-Aids off. I'm okay going in and be like, I know it's wild to think about this, guys, but let's do it anyway. I'm very careful to be respectful of the biases that I walk into, the boxes, because I'm not in your box, Jake, I'm not. And that's what gives me the gift to be able to come in and say, why are you doing it that way? Nobody else is asking that question because that's just the way we've done it. Doc, why would we change? Well, it looks like it's not working, guys. What would happen if we did this, this, and this? Oh my gosh, let's try it. Right? So that's kind of my approach. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste, because I heard another saying that's really powerful. Money comes and goes, but time only goes, right? When you're younger, it doesn't really matter. Time's forever, right? However, I'm not that old, 48, but you start to really understand that time is the resource. Money, plenty of it out there right now, and plenty of it out there before now. So it's not the money that you need to be focused on. It really is how am I spending, how am I deploying my most important resource, and that's time. And if I come in there and BS and try to make myself look smart, I'm wasting my own time. Not a big fan of that. There's a line
That's
from
great.
Robert California in Office. I don't know if you remember the scene, but he looked at him. He said, Andy, do I strike you as the kind of guy who would waste his own time? And ever since I don't know if you remember The Office, and Robert California was played by James Spader. But anyway, ever since I heard that, I was like, that's a very powerful position to take. I'm not going to waste my own time, much less yours. So
that's so great. And it really is something that entrepreneurs can really learn from. And I love the goo levers that you mentioned. It's very, very interesting. And the 10Xing the business just makes incredible sense for not only startup founders, but founders of mature companies as well, all companies. So Chris, when we think about entrepreneurship, and I know that you're fully ingrained in helping so many companies, and I think you mentioned the fact that, you're going to go in and give these companies the straight shot. In other words, you're not going to be a yes man. You're going to go in and you're going to tell the founders and the CEOs and the people that hire you what they need to hear. How oftentimes do you see founders surround themselves with people that only are going to tell the founder what they want to hear, and the founder's not able to really get sort of the person that's going to be more honest with them than other people that are just trying to protect their jobs and give the founder the information that they think he wants to hear or she wants to hear?
I can tell you that if I were to work more in a corporate enterprise environment, I don't know. I think my answer would be that I see it a lot. In an entrepreneurial environment, it's you're either at the table or you're on the table, right? That's a saying that I heard. I was like, wow. And that's kind of what I see with the leadership teams and entrepreneurial organizations is that everybody is like, they're there for a reason. There's not any superfluous seats at the table. So I don't see it as much in entrepreneurial enterprises as I imagine that I would in corporate.
Interesting. Chris, let's take our conversation and turn it to entrepreneurship, because I've been waiting to get you on the show and I've had so many questions. And again, thank you so much for slicing some time out. I know that you're in between calls and you help so many companies throughout the world with their strategy and increasing their business. And of course, like you mentioned, getting them to think about 10X, growth versus just 10, 20, 30% growth. And I think right there, that's a huge thing that you bring to the table, and getting the founders thinking in alignment and putting a strategic growth system together for your clients. But for the younger entrepreneurs watching the show, Chris, they're listening to this and they're saying to themselves, wow, Chris is really making so much sense. I'm going to rewind this and I'm going to listen to it over and over and over again, because there's so many words of wisdom and gems throughout this conversation. But maybe they're having a tough time in their business. Maybe they're hitting a pothole. Maybe they're hitting a wall they think they can't climb over. And you and I, as entrepreneurs, for many years, we know that all entrepreneurs experience this. But what can you say to the entrepreneurs that maybe are at a sticking point where they're thinking to themselves, wow, I'm having a tough time getting through this situation. Maybe they freak out a little bit and they're deer in the headlights. How do you, Chris Daigle, Dr. Daigle, get them through those potholes and get to the other side?
It's a young man, come sit in daddy's lap for a second. I got some advice for you. No, I would, here's one of the main things that I do. I don't claim to know it all. However, one of the things that I'm very good at is saying, okay, great, we need this. Let's find that person. Let's find the best in the world. Let's reach out and say, do you consult? And they're going to say, yeah. So sometimes I just may need 30 minutes of an expert's time. So for all of you who are out there who are trying to wear all the hats, one, go read E-Myth by Michael Gerber and understand that is not how you get there, right? Become familiar with this concept of working in your business versus working on your business. Watch this, versus working above the business, okay? Find out where you are in that process as an entrepreneur. Are you working too much? Are you too technical in your business and that sort of thing? If you do find yourself to where you've hit a wall and you're like, man, I don't know where to go, crowdsource the answer. Join a Facebook group that's free. Say, hey guys, I'm hitting this, blah, 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 blah. Go on LinkedIn and find somebody who specializes in that thing. And I'm telling you, if you reach out and just say, hey, impressive resume, do you consult? They're going to say yes. And sometimes it may be, a couple $100 that you spend on a phone call. I use clarity.fm a lot when I find, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but It's a marketplace for expertise. And for instance, I do a lot of M&A. There's a guy on there, Harvard MBA, blah, 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 like all these pedigrees. And I can get access to that person's time for $10 a minute, maybe $20. It's not even that much. It's like, and so don't think that, well, I've got to go and master this new subject. Let me go buy all the books and watch all the, no, you don't. As a leader, you need to be very good at deployment of resources, human resources, intellectual resources, capital resources. You don't need to be the one that's carrying the bag there. You need to be, hey, get that from there. We need this guy. So you are much more of a, I've had the good fortune of meeting a guy named Rudy Reyes. If you've ever seen a Generation Kill on Showtime, it was the story about this Marine unit. And Rudy was actually the only person in that unit that was asked to play himself. He's such a character. But his role in the military was they'd drop him in and he would be almost like a battlefield director. Okay. That's what you are as an entrepreneur. You're one man shop, one woman shop, whatever. You still are deploying virtual resources, fractional resources, whatever. But if you don't see yourself as that person working above the business and you think that you need to be in there tinkering, the growth curve is going to be very long for you. But if you can understand, the sooner that I can get to where I'm leveraging the resources of others, the faster you will get to the point to where you are, your growth is accelerated personally, business-wise, your reputational growth is accelerated, because that's great if you're a master of something. However, leaders at the highest levels, they're masters of leverage, right? And that would be my advice is don't try to do it by yourself, man. First off, don't try anything, just do it. But don't do it by yourself. Leverage the communities that you're involved in, leverage the experts, and compress your learning curve to this rather than, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to save a couple $100 and read all these books for the next month or two. No, just money is time, right? But it's not the way you think. Money allows you to compress time. If you've got access, if you can spend the $50 to, hey, can I bend your ear for 15 minutes kind of thing, so much more valuable than you trying to learn it yourself. But last thing I want to say on that though, Jake, is that embrace the challenges, because those are high quality problems. In the MBA environment that you're talking about in the classroom, you don't get the chance to experience the emotions that come with, oh my gosh, my business it's in the can, whatever, right? Like, and that the emotional intensity combined with the experience, that's where learning happens. You read a book and you're like, oh, that sucks for them that their business went under. But when it's you and the real world, don't look at it as, oh my gosh, boo-hoo, poor me. Look at it as, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to grow. Now, let's fix it, right? That's the way I like to approach it.
Chris, that's absolutely outstanding. And for the people watching the show, you can obviously hear why Dr. Daigle, his strategic service is in such high demand. It's backed and based on decades of experience and skill. And he's really going to help you unlock your business's truest potential. And really, he's going to help you develop a new plan of thinking, a new plan of strategy, a new way of approaching your business side by side with you. It's really incredible. I think I'm going to have you back on the show, because I'm going to entitle the next show, How to Earn a Mini Harvard MBA in 30 Minutes or Less with Dr. Chris Daigle, because it's just so awesome. And maybe that's going to be the title of your next book as well. I wanted to take a minute just to thank you so much. I mean, this has been so great. I love the interviews where I'm listening to the interview myself and I'm saying to myself, I'm learning so much here for myself. And I've been in business for a lot of years, more years than I want to, care to say, but I'm listening to you and I'm saying to myself, wow, this is like really great stuff. And I'm going to incorporate some of the things that Chris is saying in my own businesses. So thank you so much for helping me in my business during the call, Chris.
Happy to help. And that's kind words. Thanks, man.
I love it. Listen, this has been great. I'm going to have you back on the show. Anybody that wants to reach out to Chris, just go to Daigle Strategic. Look at him. Just Google his name. You'll find everything about him. And Dr. Daigle, I wanted to take a minute to thank you so much for slicing out some time and helping so many people watching the show, helping me. I mean, this is going to be great for my business as well. and really putting the people listening and watching on the right track. So thanks so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Hope you got something from this. Thanks, Jake.